This is the 19th season of Bass Talk Live. BTL is presented by Bass Cat Boats, Strike King Lures, Aftco, Pro Guide Batteries, X-Zone Lures, Shoreline Boat and RV Repair, Spro, Gamakatsu, Big Bite Baits, The Bass Tank, Denali Rods, Beatdown Outdoors, and Sunline.
BTL coming at you.
Good morning and welcome to another exciting edition of BTL Bass Talk Live, where we're going to talk bass fishing. We are on the water with the man from the Bass Tank. Are you still being referred to as the mad scientist?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
the mad scientist, Scott Palmer. So here's the plan, folks. This is the beauty of live shows. We're out in Shawnee. We're in Scott's Cougar. I've got my Cougar. If you listen to BTL, you know I've told stories about my buddy Juice in the past, usually about how he breaks baits, casts into trees, stuff like that. He's the cameraman for today. I thought we were going to be good for like an hour and a half. Pan the camera just over there, Juice. That seems to be taking a little bit of a turn, does it not?
Yeah.
You a little nervous about that right now?
You know, no, we'll be fine. We'll be fine. We'll be great. We're both fishermen.
So the whole point was we're going to have Scott come down from the Bass Tank headquarters, really run through. We got a lot of great questions from BTL listeners, but here's the caveat of what is going to happen. Should that turn electric, these boats are going to go back on the trailer. We're about 10 minutes from the studio. We'll reboot everything, and then we'll just do a BTL with Scott Palmer from the BTL studio. Does that sound like a plan?
I think that sounds like a safe and good plan.
I'm going to leave it up to you because I get into the show. So if you see something, I see a little bit of angst in your eyes, perhaps. But like I said, we're out here on Shawnee Twin Lakes. Scott, run through kind of the setup that you're running on your Bass Cat. Then I'll run through what I have, and then we will just jump right into it because who knows how much time we'll get on the water. We'll start with live scope settings.
Okay.
But just kind of run through what you have on your boat. And Juice, you can kind of come behind here too.
Yep, absolutely. So on this boat right here, I'm full Garmin. So these are two 1243 XSVs at the console. I run another 1243 up front at the bow, and then I run a 9-inch mapping unit. There's just no reason for me to have a big unit up there that's for mapping only. Okay. And so it gives me more room. So that's my setup. I am running the Garmin Force trolling motor, and then obviously live scope.
Okay. So explain what the numbers actually mean, because I got confused when I was picking my Garmin unit. I would call you guys, you'd be like, well, you need the 943 SV 10 12 11, and I'm like, I don't know what the hell that means.
Yeah, and that's a common thing. And so so this, I said a 1243. So the 12 is the size of the screen, 12-inch screen. The 4 indicates that it comes preloaded with these fishing contour maps, so I don't have to buy an additional map card. It already comes with an avionics.
Okay.
And then the 3 is just a designator. The XSV indicates that the side and down 2D sonars transducer will plug directly into the unit. The unit can process that data.
What's the advantage to that?
I don't have to have a sonar box like that extra module. You remember those days of the original LSS1 structure scan box.
Yeah.
That was a network sonar. Well, these units have gotten so smart that some units have the ability to just translate the data, process that in there. And then what happens is I take sonar and I put it into one, and then I can share it to any unit, and I'm networked.
Okay, so it's easier.
I saw the confusion on your face. So my transducer on the rear back here is connected to this guy. See, and I can see that because it says built in. I'm running the GT36. Okay. And then the console right actually has my GT8, which is my glue-in hole transducer. Okay. So that's my 2D there. There's one is going here and one is going here, and then they can share the data. So I could come over to here, sonar, and you'll see this, but you see where it says console left GT36 versus built in, and it's referencing
that one.
Okay, exactly.
I see what you're saying. So these two are tied in. They're also talking. Let's go up to the ones up front.
100%.
So those are tied into these units, but this is your unit. Now, this top unit, you're primarily using that or exclusively using that for live scope.
Correct. But I do have it tied into the network.
Okay.
Just because it makes it easier for updates. I like to share my screen back there sometimes. It makes it easier for filming. And then, someone doesn't have to be over my shoulder all the time. So it's not necessary. A lot of guys will just run it dedicated, as a live scope. It's not even on the network. And that's totally fine. And then this guy right here, I do have my in the Garmin Force trolling motor, it has a built-in transducer. And so it says built-in, so it's plugged right into that.
I find it interesting also that you go with is this a 7-inch screen?
This is actually a 9-inch screen.
Oh, this is a 9-inch screen.
Yep.
Okay. And this is a 12.
That's a 12. Yep.
And this is just for mapping.
Yep.
And then this is that. So then how does the Garmin trolling motor then ties in with all the units as well?
100%. So right now I don't have the Garmin paired. I'm still breaking this boat in. As you know, I just got this boat, so I'm still setting it up myself, guys. It takes me a while to do it as well. But I literally can just pair it with the Force trolling motor. So if you can see me right here, I would come in here to settings. Then I'd go to communications, I'd go to wireless devices, and there's going to be a Garmin trolling motor right here. So it says I'm not connected. Then if we go up here to the Garmin Force, I'd hit the power button 3 times. I'm going to get that blue guy here, and then we come back here and we hit start. And it's going to search for this Garmin Force trolling motor, and I believe I need to do an update on the trolling motor, so it's probably going to fail, and that was expected. But once that happens, I'd be able to come in here and basically, there it is right there, trolling motor top bar. Once it's paired, it gives me that option, and then I'd be able to control it. So I knew I needed to do an update. I was a little bit behind. I apologize, but that's the process. It's 30 seconds, and you're going, and you can control it from here.
All right, so that's kind of your setup that you have. You're running the Bass Tank power harness to make sare that you get maximum power throughout the entire boat, which is basically you'll never see the power harness the way it's kind of like the transmission of your car.
Right. It does. It's the offensive lineman. It's what does the work. It gets none of the glory, but if you don't have a good offensive line, you're not going to win very many football games.
All right.
So with that, you can see I am running lithium batteries. I'm running 13.2, and here's the telltale. Both units are, and these are the front units, are both running 13.2, meaning they're both seeing the same voltage. They're both tied in. There's no voltage drop there, so that's phenomenal. I've got confidence to go all day.
All right, we know what you're running now. Before we get blown off the water here, or literally blown into the water, let's jump in the boat and let's show the folks how you're gonna find something on side imaging, tie all this stuff together right off the hopper, and then be able to fish something.
100%.
So what we have out here is there's I don't know, what would you call this, a barn, a foundation?
Yeah, it looks like it was a structure sometime that collapsed.
Okay.
It's definitely not a brush pile.
And you found this on your unit. It literally said, what does it say, barn?
Yeah, it said submerged barn. I said, let's go take a look at that. And now what was interesting was it was not where the community had the marker. So I still had to search for it, but it didn't give me a general search area to start.
And what type of mapping or card did you need for that to pop up?
That was just built in. Yeah.
Okay.
So I am running the Garmin Vision Plus card.
Okay.
And that is the enhanced mapping, and there's some cool features with it. Not every lake has those premium features. This lake didn't have some of them, unfortunately, but we can still go over that for sure. So what we're going to do here, and this is the way I go about scanning.
Just switch me spots here, geez.
So if there's a target that I know is out here, there's 2 different ways that I scan it, Matt, and we've talked about this, different mindsets. There's times that I'll just make this my full left and this my full right if I'm just going down the lake, essentially, looking around. But when I have a target in mind, I want to know what it looks like out here, and then I'll come back over and come over the top of it to see, what its height is. Now, the great thing about live scope, for example, is that I don't have to get on top of it anymore. I can go find it and then just turn around, drop a waypoint on it, and then jump back up and look at it with live scope. And it's really interesting when you see the differences with what you would expect it to be versus when you look at it with live scope. And so that's why this is still side and down, and your 2D is still a very, very useful tool from that standpoint. So I did mark this earlier, as you can see right here. So we're going to track that. There's a brush pile.
And how can you tell if that's a brush pile on there?
All right. So with this, now this is an older brush pile. You see, you've got a little bit of a shadow there, and you can actually see it right there. But then you see how you've got these lines coming off of it. You see how it's, let's see, good grief. There we go. You can see the lines coming off of it. Think of it being little fingers sticking up there, causing a shadow. It's not like a tree. It's a small pile that someone placed. You know, someone definitely placed that. So the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to just touch this, and I'm going to mark that pile. And then away we go. Someone's super secret jackpot pile is what that is. Don't worry, we didn't give out the coordinates. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to line myself up with this deal. Now you can see I'm going straight, and the boat is still coming back. Now this is something I haven't really talked a whole lot about, but heading sensors versus GPS position to understand heading. Your heading sensors give you an extra point, and it's magnetic. So if you're sitting there fishing a pile and you drift off of it, it's going to keep you pointed, your boat pointed that direction.
Holy cow.
Yeah, there you go. So there's the structure we had found. And you can see, I'll show you see, that was just off to the side, so there was something there, and then that helps me get the entire picture. But you can see if this sticks up. Let's pause this real quick. Let's go up here. You see how you've got shadows right there? Guys, that indicates that's off the ground. That's off the bottom. So you've got real white right here. So you've got real white areas. That means it's higher up. You're getting a harder return. And what that is, that indicates obviously it's something that's off the bottom. But you see this softer stuff right here that looks a little bit more like the actual bottom. That probably means it's silted in a little bit. It's got some growth on it, probably closer to the bottom or on the bottom, even though there's still shadow. So it's off, but then this is sticking up. So some of this I'm going to expect, if we turn around with live scope and look at it, we're going to see some structure off the bottom.
Okay, before we do that though, one of the cool things that you're really good at is dialing in the side imaging.
Yep.
You're using kind of a unique color.
Yep.
I would say 90% of guys stick with amber.
Yep.
When they live scope, this is be more of an azul.
Yeah, this is technically called aqua, I believe is what it's called, but close. So,
kind of walk through on how you got to those settings to make that pop, because I think that's what a lot of people struggle with, is knowing and making sure that what they're looking at is maximized on their unit.
100%. And so the first thing I'm going to do on a lake, and I kind of waited because I wanted to do it, in real time here, is no settings on any two lake are the same, honestly. Now, it may be a little bit different and it may work on every lake, but, to maximize your performance. So the number one thing that people do the most of is they say, man, I really want this to be bright.
That's just contrast.
That's
screen
just
brightness.
that's not screen brightness.
Okay.
That is contrast. And what it does is it really washes out a lot of these features. If you get it to, so I actually run it a little bit lower because I get a little more detail. So, I'm in that 53 to 55 typically. Most lakes I'm between 50 and 60. I will tell you that right now. And you can see the difference there.
And there's a contrast whether you're running a Humminbird, a Lowrance,
yeah,
a
some
Garmin.
of them call it sensitivity. There's always that setting in there. Screen brightness is just literally how bright everything is. And on a day like today, I don't have to have my screen super bright because we got low light. But in the sun, I've got to have that thing maxed out.
Okay.
So, and like right here, it's set up to auto high, so it'll adjust up and down. The other thing is deciding what frequency I'm going to run.
That's the biggest thing that guys struggle with.
Yeah.
I have no idea what
Yeah.
that means, but I also hear guys who are really good with their graphs say the sneakiest thing was that they changed the frequency on it, and they found stuff that guys were completely missing.
100%. So right here, we're running the highest frequency. So this is going to give us the most detail that we can possibly have. Now, you see what what's great about this, actually, I stop myself. Even I get out of, all right. So let me turn this off so we can sit here and talk. So right here, let's go to options. And you see what I'm talking about when I'm running the contrast. You see how that disappears if I run that too high?
Oh my gosh.
And then if I run this down, you see, I can see that here, but I can't, the shadows don't pop as much. So there's a happy spot where right there that starts to pop out, but I don't wash out my range out here. That's the balance, is having it perfect right here, but still being able to see things out there 75, 85 feet away. And so something we've talked about, this kind of brings it up. Remember how we talked about, we've said this on BTL before, talking about the basically the cone, right? So these 2 points right here for you guys who are watching are the bottom of, this is directly below the boat. So these are not 30 feet from the boat. This is actually 0. So take this, say this number, subtract this, that's the depth you're going to be in. Now, the sonar is updating, so we're actually in 21 foot now, but this out here is in 25 to 26 foot of water, just based on that right there. So understand that this right here is not 75 feet away, right? It's, call it 30, minus 0 is 30, so we're in 30 feet of water. Then 75 minus 30 is 45. So this is actually only 45 feet to either side of me.
Oh, so that explains a lot why I called you and I was like, I don't think my side imaging's working right, because if you're side imaging in deep water, you're like, man, I know that bridge piling is less than 80 foot, but if you're in 50 foot of water, you're really only seeing 30 foot because you're also 50 foot down.
Because we have to consume.
So that's why you have to be so much closer to it, and why it looks so different in shallow water, because you're actually seeing a lot more bottom.
That's exactly right. So this, if we were in deeper water, we would have a lot less range here, for sure. Yeah,
that's very interesting.
Yeah, and so anyway, so we can see as I get this up, that may be fine. Okay, I know something's there, and it gets better out here. But, like I said, you can see, here's my default is 50 to 60. 60s to me starts washing out a little bit too much. You get down here, you can see it really well, but I can't, because I ran over the top of it, I can tell you that's sticking up, because guess what? They just stick it up in the water column, right? Remember earlier we drove by it and it was completely outside. We couldn't see. Well, I said, hey, some of these are sticking up. And sure enough, because these are in the water column, if I can hide that right there, because that's here,
exactly what you went over.
Yep. So we went right over the top of it. So ignore that for a second. And if that's what you saw, let's see if you can see around my hand, off to the side, you would know there was something there, but you wouldn't really get a good view because your contrast was too low. But if we raise this up a little bit, keep from touching things. Now you can see it a little bit better. So there's that happy balance in there. And I typically am between, like I said, 50 to 60 is where I found. That's Garmin. All of them are going to be just a hair different. So the frequency, we've talked about this, the higher the frequency, the better the definition, but the shallower we're going to get. So if I'm 35 feet and less, I'll run a high frequency, but then I'll change it lower as well. So high frequency, you're going to see fish less. And if you're seeing fish, because it's going to not penetrate that fish to give you a return on the fleshy stuff. That's why your 2D sonar, your traditional, still the best at indicating those arches, right? Because it's a lower frequency, the way the cones hit, the whole 9 yards.
That's why you just see little white dots on the down, on the down imaging.
That's right, because we're just getting a small section, the backbone, the swim bladder.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yep, and so it doesn't look like a
So that's
fish.
why if you're running down next to 2D, you see the beautiful arch on 2D and you just see a speck on the down and you're like, well, what's up? Is the 2D reading something that isn't there? Is the down?
Exactly. And it's the way the fish comes into the cone. So it's a cone like this. So if a fish is coming in this cone right here, the front side is going to be this arch, and then when it's right above it, it's going to hit it straight down, and then as it's leading, it's hitting it this way, right? So that's why you get an arch.
Creating the arch.
That's what's creating the arch.
And that's when you're passing over the fish.
Passing over.
Now, when the fish is stationary under the boat and the boat's not moving,
you're going to get streaks. You're just going to get
spaghetti lines.
Spaghetti lines, exactly.
Lasagna.
Or if you're sitting there, let's say we're stationary, and this is the old school live version. When we would slab deep fish, you'll get those streaking fish. Yeah. Everything else will be stationary. Streaking fish will say, that's my active fish. Or if you ever dropped a slab down there and you yo-yo, you'd see it go whoop. You'd see it go up and down. Well, that's you streaking through the cone. Well, that's why when those fish, when you see that streak, that's an active fish that's actively feeding versus just sitting there stationary.
Okay, makes sense. All right, what else on the side imaging before we go back over it and get one step closer to catching a bass?
So the other thing is scroll speed.
Okay.
Scroll speed is literally, let me get this going here. So I'm going to start us up here. So the scroll speed right here, if we're out here graphing around, if I speed this up, I want you guys to see. I'm gonna go way extreme. But see how fast it's going. I'm not gonna be able to see anything there, but you see how it's starting to kind of elongate some things. Well, then if I get too slow, you see how this instantly cleaned up. But by the time something comes here, I'm gonna be so far. I'm like, wow. Now there's times when you need that. So it's kind of playing with matching the boat speed where you feel like, okay, I'm getting a good return, but it's not so far behind me that when I mark it, it's, a half mile behind.
And to determine how far behind you it actually is, I mean, you can mark it and then see how far it is behind you.
That's exactly right. So right here, we'll watch the graph. And so we're going to just stop this right here, and we're going to drop a waypoint.
Okay.
And you see how close it was right behind the boat. So that was pretty stinking close. So we're about matching the speed of the boat right now.
Okay.
And to me, that's about ideal. Right. Maybe just a hair slower than the boat's going, so I'm gaining some distance because now I'm flirting with that. And there we talked about there's some fish we just went over.
Mm-hmm. So will those look? Yeah. Look at how those little specks on the down and the side imaging, very solid arches on the.
Yep. So you can see you can start to see some elongating, and you can kind of start telling these are bigger fish. These are smaller fish. That's a small school of bait right there. There's some what I would call bass, or could be some big crappie. Mm-hmm. I don't know if there's big crappie in here.
Like 6.
But then you see the good arches here. There's what I was talking about right there. That's a streaking fish, right? Because we were going this way. This is streaking fish. These fish right here are moving. These fish are stationary.
And you can tell that just by the way that they look.
The way the return is. You see how these are elongated?
Yep.
And then now we're starting to get our spaghetti because we've gone still. We're going to start getting the lasagna.
Okay.
All right. So back to the side, if you will. So we got we messed with our contrast, our frequency, our scroll speed. Then the other thing is this noise reject, and you can play around with this, and really all it's going to do is affect the top of it. It's really not for side. Then the appearance, like I said, I'm running color scheme aqua, and you can change this, and it does depend on what I'm looking for. The moss, which is a horrible screen, I'm going to tell you that right now, but it's really good for finding grass edges.
Okay.
Or the black emerald is really good. Now, again, notice when I change color palettes how bad this washes out. So let's go back through this. So if I change a color palette, I am absolutely going to have to go change my contrast and my settings.
Okay.
So every one change can affect others.
So your settings are based on your color palette.
That's exactly right. Okay. So
I'm
adjusting it for that color. Now, one that's overlooked, and I may let a secret out and I may get hate mail later, but I don't care. I'm here to help people catch fish. Inverse grayscale.
Ooh, that looks interesting.
This is one of the cleanest colors there is. There's not a lot of extra. The hard spots show up hard, the bright, and the shadows show up shadowy.
There's got to be some sort of brush right there.
That's a brush pile right there.
You can see the shadow on the back of it.
That's exactly right.
Can we miss it? Oh, you can scroll back on it.
Let's see if I can zoom in. There we go. I can't reach over that edge. We were right on the edge of it, but you can see the shadows. There is. It's probably a stump, or there's a pile there. It's not just a stump because how long that goes out.
Okay.
I mean, that's good grief. That's 15 feet. The shadow is. Oh, don't make me do math this morning. That's probably a 6 or 7 foot tall pile.
Okay.
So that's definitely a brush pile.
Even though it doesn't look like a ton there and it looks long.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So let's.
Now we're going to use your mapping to get back over to the whatever the heck we're looking at.
And the other thing is, as you see, I'm turning. It's going to start making this. So understand when you're turning. Be careful assuming something is there.
Oh, there's a couple people on the instant feedback who use that color palette. Peter says, I use that color palette.
Sorry if I let your secret out.
Oh, okay. There it is. Wow, that looks like some twisted.
Uh-huh.
Okay, that looks totally different than it did.
Yep.
In a different color palette.
So let's put that right there. Now here's something of interest. I think that might be a second. That may be a secondary. Could be a secondary structure.
Okay.
Let's go back and hit it again. But it does. It looks totally different, right? To me, this sticks up really, really well.
Yeah.
Now here's something of note as well, because I get this call a lot. Hey, my GPS, my coordinates, my waypoint was off. Now there's two things on the Garmin. If you just hit this mark button right here, it looks like a waypoint. What it's doing is it's actually marking the position of the boat. That is not a waypoint. That is marking the position of the boat. If I'm going to set a waypoint, I go and I actually hit the waypoint button. And where did it go? See how it set it out here?
Yep.
That's a huge difference.
I got you.
And so people say, well, it's off. Well, I'm marking waypoints. And when I start hearing people say I'm marked, which I use that terminology too, I need to be better.
You're marking where the boat is, not where the structure
you're marking where the boat is, not dropping a waypoint.
So now we're coming back on the area that you had side imaged. We should be seeing it right now.
Yep.
There it is, which means you're dead on.
We crossed our waypoint and we saw it about the same time. So my scroll speed is right there the same.
Okay.
And that's a good way. If you identify a pile, that's one way to check it, is then mark it, again, waypoint, and then drive over it and see how quickly it is. Say, okay, that's my speed. I'm good to go.
Okay. I can't tell whether that's Armageddon coming in or not, but let's try to get a package together here. So,
yeah, that's I don't know if you see the angst in my eyes.
That was some lightning. So we got a lot done on the water here. Do you want to put him on the trailer?
I think that's probably wise.
We'll put them on the trailer, and then we will head back, and you will have to refresh your screen, but we've got a good section. This is a great side imaging half-hour segment, and we'll be back live in studio in about a half an hour after we get these things. So it was worth it.
Yeah, worth it.
It was worth it. I greatly appreciate it. All right, we will be back. You're going to have to refresh your screen. You'll see it on the BTL YouTube. It'll be a new feed, but thank you for bringing your boat down here. Sorry, absolutely. I misjudged the weather a little bit.
It's Oklahoma.
If you guys like this, if you like the replay, there's a ton more live stuff we can do on the water where you're asking the questions on BTL. Like I said, we can get up, we can start messing around with the live scope, with all the different settings on that, targeting the fish. Yeah, it's starting to rain right now. So, all right, guys, we'll be back. But this has been another edition of BTL with Scott Palmer from the Bass Tank. Stay tuned to part 2, which is going to be in studio. See ya.